work once again and on my way home. You guys, today was probably one of the best days I've had at this facility. And that's saying quite a lot because this place that I work, it's actually a really nice workplace. I would say, I don't know, most of the time it's not the worst days ever. I've worked at some facilities where you just literally, it's really hard to come to work just because of the lack of resources, and mentally you just get so burnt out from working and just taking care of these lovely humans. And it really takes the spark out of you. So I'm really grateful because I feel like this workplace feels like a sustainable place to work. And I feel really blessed because it could be totally a different story. You never really know about a place until you get in it. And I know because I've been there. So if you are somebody who's working your butt off all the time, you feel underappreciated, you feel like no one has your back, you feel like every single day you go into work and you're short-staffed or short resources, I know it feels, you can't say you're not alone because we already know that. Everyone already knows that this is like a pretty common thing, which is actually really unfortunate. And this is the problem, I think, with healthcare and nursing. For me, I've never worked in a CFO position or a position where I'm in charge of the finances. I don't actually know the financial structure and setup of some of these hospitals and how it all goes down. So I think it's really easy to get frustrated from a worker's perspective, like where you are like a cog in the wheel, so to speak, if you will, and somebody else is in one of those higher paid like executive positions and you're underneath, and somebody's making the decisions. They've got the experience to do it, they've worked their way up, and it's just like you hope that these individuals are representing things accurately. They're not cutting corners where they shouldn't be. And sometimes you really don't know who to trust. You don't know what's going on up at the top. And I think that part, the lack of transparency perhaps may feel a little bit difficult, but I do know that running a business is hard, and if you don't do a good job managing your budget, I know that people go out of business, you lose money, things don't go well. So it's a whole thing. And obviously for me, I have it's almost like just a very general idea of how it all works in hospital business. But back to you, healthcare worker, or place that a lot of people are probably watching this who work at places where they feel the pressure too, where they feel like they're shorthanded. It's very tough. It's high pressure. And when you're in that stressful environment every single day, it really makes it hard for your morale in life, and you just want to find a way out of there. So don't forget to pray too about the path forward, finding a more sustainable place of work if you're somebody who's just dealing with that every single day. I feel blessed because I feel like God, when I look back on my life, I feel like God has really truly ordered my steps, and it's almost like the path just keeps appearing under me. Honestly, there are times where I'm not really sure what's going to happen the next day in terms of security in my life. That's not everything, but I've really been through some difficult situations and some difficult times where the first thing you want to do is just freak out and just I don't know, take the safest route possible, but it's been on my heart that the Lord has like certain things, that choices that maybe he would rather have me make that aren't always the easy ones, and that's just how it goes, like when you're walking with the Lord. Have you ever been through anything like that? Where on paper something seems like, okay, this is what I should do, but in your heart and in your spirit, you know that that's not right. You know that that's not it. Like, there's just something that you know that tells you like that's not it for you. I want to hear if you guys have had any experiences like that, and if any relate to your career or whatever. Because I've had some. But yeah, otherwise, the day went really well. The patients were really sick, but I feel like I got the orders that I needed. I felt like the providers were available. Sometimes your patient is not doing well and you can't really get a hold of the doctor, and it's really frustrating. But today my patient went to surgery to get part of their foot amputated because of osteomyelitis, which, if you're not really sure what that means, it is a condition where an infection gets into the bone, and depending on how bad it is, you might need to get an amputation there, but not always. It needs to be treated with antibiotics, and that's exactly what this guy had going on. He had to get part of his foot amputated, and he had antibiotics, and also his heart is just no good. His heart is so decompensated. And you guys get this. This was like super interesting. So the patient, I actually had this patient last week. I had this patient last week when they were on med-surg. So not ICU, but med-surg unit, and they were getting a surgery also. I am so glad my patient did not go to MRI first before the surgery, because in MRI he had a pacemaker. The patient tells me, okay, I've been told I can't go in an MRI machine because of my pacemaker. And I said, okay, that sounds good. Thank you for letting me know. And what I do know is that nowadays they have made technology to be able to be compatible with pacemakers and MRIs. I don't know how it all works, but I know this, that you can work it out usually. Whether it's the MRI machine, whether it's the setting that the pacemaker needs to be turned to, that's what's going on. So this guy goes in the MRI machine, and what happens next is insane. His pacemaker stops working. No more pacemaker spikes. When you have a pacemaker, if the pacemaker is working, you'll see these little lines on the rhythm strip. And those went missing, and then the patient, he started to have a rhythm called VTAC, and that's when your ventricles are just beating super fast. And he had an ICD, so that's basically a defibrillator inside, because he's had issues like this before. So this patient, the pacemaker's not working, and then all of a sudden the ICD stops working, so he doesn't get the shock that he needs to stay alive. So they have to cardiovert him, where they had to basically put pads on him and shock him outside the body. So in the last week, since I had him the first time and when I had him today, he had to get 2 shocks. 2 times he cardioverted, and he needed that, and also he needed to be placed on drips, antiarrhythmic drips. So he's been through a lot. He just didn't look good today, and I felt bad. Sometimes you just look at a patient and you feel like things are just not going the right direction, even though you're doing everything that you can. So I hope that things just keep getting better for him, and that he's able to regain the function that he needs to be able to make the next step forward. So I'll be thinking about him, but it was a good day. And then my other patient had he was dealing with alcohol withdrawal, and I always feel bad when I take care of a patient that's dealing with alcohol withdrawal, because of the fact that, especially if they're like super young, I just feel sad when somebody falls into addiction and they know that their health is crumbling. Their whole health is deteriorating, and that was the reason why he ended up in the hospital, because he had a medical issue associated with a complication of drinking too much alcohol. And it's just so sad, because you know that somebody could make choices to prevent that, but for whatever reason they have not been able to choose that. And it's hard to really just think about that. I think what comes to my mind is, I think I've said this before, but one time I had a patient who had the same eating disorder that I used to have. I used to struggle with bulimia for 11 years. I got better. But I was worried for the longest time that I wasn't going to be able to recover. And I went to 2 rehab programs. And what ended up helping me at the end was a solution from God. The things that He guided me to that now I teach other people. The gut healing, the nutrition. And I remember that she was in the hospital for a hole in her esophagus from purging her food too much vomiting. And that was the very thing that I was struggling with, and it really freaked me out. It got me to this point where I knew I wasn't going to be that patient. I'm going to have to figure this out. And I almost wonder if this individual that I was taking care of today had ever had one of those moments where they just saw, you think that maybe these people haven't seen how bad it can get, and they haven't had the chance to see how it ends. And that whole thing just is very morbid to think about. But when you see it every day, and you want people to be able to make different decisions, but you notice that they haven't been able to successfully do it, it's just a very sad situation. So he was my other guy. Had to treat some alcohol withdrawal on him with some meds. And then at the end of my day, I got an admit 15 minutes before a report starts. And normally I would not care, but it was just that perfect amount of time where everyone would understand that you were not able to do anything for that patient before handing them off. You just settle them in and then hand them off. And it's not, I hope that nobody takes this the wrong way, but at the same time, I think every nurse is thinking the same thing. It's like somebody's going to be given to me brand new right when I'm about to leave. And you still got to leave on time. So it's this, unspoken rule that if they arrive after a certain amount of time, then you're good. You're off the hook, right? Everyone gets it. So I was happy because they didn't come at 5:45, they came at 6:45. If they come at 5:45, sometimes you are expected to do all the whole admit, and then there's so much to be done because you gotta sometimes be interrupted and you get pulled away or something critical is happening, so you don't have time to do all the things. It can be a bit much, let me put it that way. I'm just so glad that didn't happen, because it happens, and it's happened to me so many times, and I don't like it. I don't like it at all. It's honestly probably one of my least favorite things about working days, and I'm sure night shift gets it too. The admit comes right at 5:45 or something. Oh, and then I found out that we were getting a transfer from another hospital that I've worked at in the area, and I was thinking about it. I was like, wow. And that is because that hospital doesn't have an ICU anymore. And that ICU got eliminated about a year ago from that facility. So that whole thing, I'll tell you guys a whole nother story about that, because there's some stories that I think you guys are gonna like. Well, it'll be interesting for you to hear, because we had a lot of codes after that ICU got taken away, and it was like so weird, because all of a sudden we were having all these emergency situations and our ICU was gonna not be there anymore, and so we're thinking like, is this how things are gonna keep going? Anyway, you guys, that's about all I've got for you today. Glad to be reporting that I had a good day, and I hope that you had a wonderful day as well, and I will see you next time. Bye.